Yes. Yeah. Yes, I hear you now. It's been a
I,
little while, Jordan. It's
I know it's been a couple weeks. I lost track of time. I've been doing, a lot of crap as we kind of enter into the spring here. So
it's great to see you though. Definitely.
yeah, thanks, man. I tried to be here if I can, but sometimes it's just I know you changed the meeting and that threw me off a little bit for a couple weeks, but I'm back, man. So
Awesome. Yeah,
yeah.
sorry for having to change it. There was just
Oh no, please, like
too
you
much
got
stuff going on.
do what you need to do, man. I get it. You're probably super busy, so I'm just grateful to be able to hop in here sometimes. So
Cool. I
yeah,
have a new way to look at a deal and possible revelation about how to build wealth that I want to get into in this at some point, but we don't have to start with it.
nice. Well, I mean,
Yeah,
that's
sure.
pretty good. I mean, what you're just gonna drop that and be like, oh, let's talk about something
Now,
else.
now you gotta wait. Let's how's the weather?
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's
Yeah.
freaking nice over here, dude. So, in Seattle, so it's finally broke into spring. I don't know about you guys, but we have a couple 80-degree days every week the past 2 weeks. So,
Man, ours has been more like your typical Seattle weather.
oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Nonstop rain. It's
Oh,
terrible.
Yeah.
bummer. I
We
know.
actually had a 4-day period where we got 5 inches, like 5.5 inches of rain here.
That's crazy. That's a lot. I mean, that's even
And
more than, you know, I mean, Seattle, like everybody thinks it rains all the time and it does, but the volume of rain it's not like I don't know how it stacks up like to other, states, but it's usually like misty, kind of like not like inches of rain.
right.
It
So,
flooded part of my basement. Uh it filled the window well up past the bottom of the window, and that's never happened ever. Like I've lived in this house for about 10 years now, and never once has I had a problem with the window well filling up and flooding, but it happened. And of course it had to happen on so on Friday I went to I was gone on Friday for a Mother's Day thing, and
oh, yeah.
uh so I didn't ever go to my basement until like Saturday night, and at that point I think it had been leaking into my basement for like over a day straight, over 24 hours. And
Oh,
oh,
the worst, man. I hate water intrusion, man. It's the worst.
It
So,
yeah.
is.
yeah,
Oh,
it just stresses you out more than anything, because like, where the hell did this shit go? And like went everywhere.
yeah.
Yeah, as
Yeah.
you keep deconstructing it, it's always worse than you think it might be when you first see it. I don't know, from my experience with houses I bought that have flooding damage, like as you start to like pull the pieces of the onion back, it's always so much more damage than like you initially think it is.
Yeah, man. Water is a horrible
Yeah.
thing. So,
Well,
sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
yeah. Well,
So did you have to like rip up your carpet and all that? And
I learned a lesson that just something I never have experienced before. I bought a pretty expensive carpet for my basement that was like waterproof almost. And there's one downside to it that I now realize. When it floods, the water obviously goes up to the edge of the room and then it seeps in between the baseboard and the carpet. So it is a waterproof carpet. The water can't get through the carpet, but that also can't get up. Right. So
right,
what happened is it went to the edges and soaked down into the pad. And
right.
I come down and notice the carpet is wet. And so we get a bunch of towels and dry it up and think the problem is solved because the carpet's bone dry. And like I could see the baseboards have some damage. I think, oh man, I'll have to get those fixed at some point. And then a couple days later, I'm noticing like, the baseboards look like they're still wet. Like this is weird. So I pull the carpet back and realize like, oh crap, like the pad is still completely soaked and it went for like 20 feet. Like it's just
Oh, man.
like, oh, I got a big problem. I didn't get out of this with just some towels and wipe it up.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
uh,
Sucks.
yeah, that is miserable. We've had 2 or 3 floods in our basement, right where our bar is. You know, it's got the sink on it and all that. It's got cabinets underneath, and it happens to be right over our kitchen. And so I've had a couple of cases where the dishwasher went and then it floods down through that drywall, and it always goes right on that bar. And then I got to empty everything out of those, you know, cabinets down there, you know, in that bar. And then you got to rip up the carpet, and you know that bar sink has overflowed a couple times. And I wish I would have just, when we first bought this house, I just wish that the first time that thing backed up, I would have just jetted the line. And instead I didn't until now, and we've been here like 23 years. And it solved all the problems. It used to be if you put way too much stuff down the disposal or whatever, then it would just back up that bar sink. And then you get this food crud that goes all over, dripping down in the cabinets.
Oh man.
And all it took was just jetting it, and now it flows fine. Don't have that problem.
Well, what are you doing to generate leads, either one of you, lately?
Well,
go ahead.
Well, for me, Eric, I think I mentioned I've been cold calling a lot.
Oh, that's right.
You know, and it's taken a while to kind of get my system down, and it's kind of expensive system that I've created. But I mean, I've been kind of crushing it on the phone, actually.
Sweet.
Like I've been doing really good. It's really hard to kind of get it's hard to build up to the point, and it's hard to stay consistent, right? That's the biggest thing. But once you kind of go in there and, make sure that you're actually putting the time in, I realize how much more opportunity there actually is. Whereas before I was like kind of stuck. I'm like, how are agents doing deals? And, and what I realize is you literally just have to talk to more people because they're out there.
Yeah.
So that's
have you gotten a listing off of cold calling yet?
So I started this probably about 2 months ago. And I don't have one under contract yet, but I am going to. Well, I'm about 90% that I have this listing in a city. It's about $850,000 listing.
That's a good one.
Yeah, and I've been kind of helping him because he basically had renters in. He put renters in it 2 months ago, and so I've gone the extra mile and have kind of talked to my attorney and stuff about tenant law, because he's kind of bleeding cash. So he needs to get the renters out of there. And then he's like, once we get the renters out of there, like, let's just get this thing listed. So, he could go behind my back and go with somebody else. But the way that I do business is I give as much value as I can and just assume that that's going to be reciprocated.
Mm-hmm.
And it usually has always done that in the past. So
cool.
Yeah, man, that's what I've been doing because I realized I need to talk to people. If I don't talk to people, then I'm not doing shit. And, I realized that when I come on these calls, and I've mentioned this before, I actually, I compare my day one to your, day 10 year, you know what I mean? Like, you have a lead system that you've been working for so long, and I'm just kind of just beginning. And so I just needed to kind of go back to brass tacks and just do the hard shit.
So. Yeah, that or shell out the money for leads. That's the only two ways to do it.
Exactly.
Right. And what I found is most people are terrified to spend the amount of money that it takes on leads to get it going, right? Because if you think, say it's $4,000 or $5,000 in ad spend per lead, you're into it like at least 10, right? Before you actually have cemented the money coming in, right? Like on the back end. And I think that's hard for it. It's not very much money in the scheme of things, right? When you get the whole business going up and running, that's no big deal. But if you don't have the money coming in yet, because you're trying to get started, shelling out 10 grand is a big deal. Like you're already needing the money, right? And then you're going to have to go backwards 10K, which is normally for most realtor is a pretty big deal when you don't have it established yet. So
Yeah.
I think getting really good at cold calling, like you're doing, is probably the best way for almost anybody to get the momentum going.
Yeah. I mean, dude, what you just said as far as that process is the exact
Yeah.
thing that happened to me. I mean, I've spent a ton of money because I had money to spend, right?
Mhm.
But you know, when you hear about fear in the market, as far as you got fear in the market, and then you got all these guys that are telling you, wholesalers that are like, oh, you got to spend at least $6,000-7,000 per deal in marketing in a super competitive area. And then you start spinning and you're like, why am I just not like doing I was doing it backwards, right? Whereas if I get one deal, right, I will literally reinvest all of that money. I don't give a shit, but there's got to be proof, because there's proof of concept there.
Yeah.
But I just have never, you know, I'm gun shy to spend the money. And so I finally just got off my ass and was like, just freaking talk to people, man. So that's where I'm at.
Well,
So are you doing any
oh.
specific group? Are you doing absentee owners? Are you doing your sphere of influence? Are you doing, you know, who are you focusing on?
So most of my success, well, I'll just tell you what my campaigns look like. So I have about 6 of them, and I probably should, you know, pare that down to just a few. But I first start off with new expired listings, which I think are great for fix and list.
They're perfect. Yeah.
They're perfect because everybody wants. The reason why I didn't sell is price. We all know that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, if you can go in there and give them a value add, and I'm not even talking to them about fix and list right now. Like I have one meeting next week that I will talk to them about fix and list, but most of them I'm just trying to get listings. So I go new expireds, new expireds, FSBOs, not that many of them. This lead that I'm talking about, I almost got the deal, came from a FRBO, which is a for rent by owner. I literally called the guy and I was like, hey man, I'm a real estate agent. I was just calling about that property you had leased. And he's like, oh yeah, I want to sell it. I'm like,
perfect.
Are you fucking kidding me, dude? That's all I needed to do. So, you know, it was awesome. And then old expireds. And then I also have downsizers and farm.
You might want to consider it. You probably have a dialer and a list, right? And you're burning through them.
Yeah.
With the recent expired list, if you can slow that down so you don't use the dialer and you have the recent expired list and you go through and you look at the MLS. So like say you have a list of like 10, right?
Yeah.
You start with the top one and you go on the MLS and you look at the expired listing and you're like, is it fully renovated already? And if the answer is yes, forget about that one. Go to the next one on the list, right? And then you say the second one is like grandma's house, for instance.
Yeah.
Right. And so just do quick numbers of like analyze the ARV. You can see the pictures. You say it's $100,000 renovation, and you can tell from doing comps in that neighborhood. Like you haven't called anybody yet. You're just doing like legwork just with these recent expires, and you're like, holy shit, the numbers on this fix and list are going to give this guy more than what he had it listed for.
Right.
Now, when you call him, your opening statement is, I'm a realtor. I see your expired listing, and I can all but guarantee you I can get you more money than you were trying to sell for. If you're willing to hear me out, I would love to present my case on how I'm going to get you that cash. And you probably will get the meeting way better than if you're just like going through the dialer and you don't know if that house is fixed up. You just what you can barely see in front of you in those few seconds while you're on the phone, you're trying to put it together. I think you're gonna, with just that list, I think you have a lot more productive use of your time if you do it the way I just explained instead of the dialer.
Yeah, no, that makes sense to me, for sure, because, you know, most of the time, most of the objections, right, are, oh, I'm relisting with the same agent, or, you know, we didn't get the price that we wanted, so we're just going to sit on it. right? And then my next line is basically, most of the time it's like, hey, if I was able to get you, a great offer with the terms that you liked, I mean, would you even consider selling it at that point? Right. And so, but at that point, if I know, I can just kind of hit them with like, yeah, I can get you more.
But if you step back for a sec, this is what they're hearing. Realtor says you get me more, blah, blah, blah. Like, I already heard that. I got burned by a realtor. Yeah, sure, whatever. Right. Like, they're like already tuning you out. But if you use the word guarantee,
yeah,
and you have conviction around it, which you can only do if you know, like, you had to do the research before you called them, so that you have, even though this isn't about anything you're actually saying over the phone, it comes across in the tone and the, like, there's a piece there that's not said, that's heard, that you can only get genuinely if you actually analyze the deal. And in the back of your mind, you're like, I know I can get them that money. And if you call them from that spot, I think your odds, it's gonna just land totally different. You're saying, I guarantee you I can get you that money. I'm not just another realtor. I have a whole different way I can set this up. If I can please just come to your house and lay it out for you, I think you're gonna be happy. Like, I know I can get you what you want. I guarantee it.
Yeah, that's a really good, I will definitely do that. The problem that I have mostly right now is that people don't answer the phone, right? But it's also, they are getting hounded by like 30 or 40 real estate agents. They get like
so
30
bad.
or 40 calls. It's
So
crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So, but that is good though, because what I'm trying to do now or next is, rather than just calling them on the dialer and then like moving on and calling them the next day,
Yeah.
I'm to like, text them. I haven't implemented this fully, but text them, email them if I have an email. Like, I don't really care how I'm reaching out, just try to get some level of contact from them.
Yeah.
And then that, I think, will help. So that definitely, there's some work involved there that I'll have to work through, but
So I've never tried this, but it just came to mind while you were talking about texting and stuff. I wonder if you did like use Camtasia or one of the Loom, or like a screen recording software, and you did I don't know, 30-second or less video where you're looking at their house and talk about how, like, oh, we could update this kitchen with my money, like, nothing out of your pocket. If this was updated and this was updated and this was updated, wouldn't it look a lot like this house that sold for X amount? And hey, if yours sold for that amount and you reimburse me just at the closing for the renovation about X amount, you're going to walk away with X amount, even more than what you had it listed for before.
yeah,
Call me. We like, it's, if you can put it all in a video, I think you could lead with it, because
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny you said that, because like the person that I follow that kind of have that I finally found scripting and like a way to communicate that I didn't find cheesy and stupid was Brandon Mulrennan, which I've talked to Ed about. And basically, he says, well, film a video, just a vertical video, and just say, hey, this is Jordan, I'm a realtor, and then hit him with it and send it. And he's like, that, no agents are doing that. So he's like, if you do it, you'll hit harder. And so it wouldn't be specific. It'd be hard to do it for each specific deal. But at the same time, you're right, because like today there was only maybe 10 new expireds.
Right.
So it's not necessarily, it's super targeted is what you're saying, rather than like just blasting it out there.
Yeah. So maybe you make 2 or 3 calls.
Yeah.
Out of the 10, and you don't even call the others because they are already renovated, or you look at the ARVs and you're like, the numbers just don't work for the others. But if you pick the 2 or 3 out of the 10, you're like, no is going to be a good deal. And you took the time and you made a video and texted it to them maybe and called them, you probably would have a much better return on your time than blasting all 10, like calling all 10 and wasting your time talking to some guy that isn't even a good fit.
Yeah, that's good. I'll start implementing that for sure. I just need to kind of, again,
I
it
should
takes,
implement that.
yeah, man, it takes a
Yeah.
couple of weeks to kind of like
Yeah.
figure everything out, get the system going, and then get consistent with it. And so, man, that's good. That's good though. I
Yeah.
like that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well,
And that really is a good idea,
that's-
just to target it like that, I think.
Yeah, for sure, man.
What are you doing to bring in leads, Ed?
I am, well, just like, I've been sending out more letters. I did 2 batches of letters in the past week to probate leads.
Oh, cool.
And I just sent a bunch of emails last night. And it is interesting because I'll get very few responses to the letters, but I'll get a lot more responses to the emails. And they're not what I'd say like positively, yeah, like come over and list my house kind of thing. But at least people are reading it and they're responding, you know?
Yeah.
And I found that, there's like, a couple different categories of probate leads. One of the ones where somebody's wife or husband has died. And in that case, their only asset, if it's just the house, they're typically not going to move from there. So it's almost like, that is such a rare chance that somebody's going to want to pack up and just move from their house, that it's a whole lot better if you get like the son or the daughter or the nephew or whatever who lives out of state, and they're the one responsible for selling this house, that's in our Arvada, Colorado, then obviously that's a whole lot better. But it's really funny though, because out of like, 100 probate leads, there's 5 to 10 that will get listed right away. And then over the past 3, 4, 5 months, the rest of them hardly have any movement. And I haven't been doing this long enough yet to determine whether they're just never going to do anything, or if it's just they're still going through this probate process and it's going to take some time.
Yeah, that is a small percentage. It kind of surprises me.
And it really is funny. Yeah. And I've been tracking it, where it's like in that first 30 days, whenever they decide that they're going to do it, doesn't mean the first 30 days after they pass away. It means whenever they decide that they're at that point, then you get 5 or 10 that they're listed out of 100. And then it just drops off. It way drops off. So I've been trying to just also pursue other things, like go to the obituaries and that type of thing. And I think like US leads, they have leads that people go through and they kind of go through the obituaries and that kind of thing. And I was going to talk to them more about that. I talked to them about 2 weeks ago. And I think I'm just going to try that. Yeah. Because you got to kind of get them before they get to the point where they've taken care of their personal representative paperwork at the county and all that. I'm going to try to get in front of that whole game. So those 5 or 10 that are going to list out of 100, I need to get in front of them before they get to that point.
Yeah. I got some thoughts on that actually real quick. First of all, I don't know, maybe this might help with your mailings, but like there is, I don't know if this is cheesy or not, but there is a probate like designation that you can get. Now my MLS does not offer it. It's actually a third-party company, but they give you kind of like a designation at the end, like a probate specialist or whatever it is. And so that's one thing. It's not that expensive. So, and there's only one person that I've seen in my area that has it. So that might be something that if you really want to kind of position yourself as a probate specialist. And then also there's something called Mailbox Power. Have you guys heard of Mailbox Power before?
I have heard of it, but I haven't done anything with it yet.
So, Eric, this might be something to check out too. Mailbox Power is basically like the coolest shit I've ever seen, because it allows you to like create a nurture program for a specific amount of time, specifically with direct mail. So you can literally say like, I want to send out, it's a monthly subscription, right? And it's like, I want to send out 8 weeks of letters. And then after 8 weeks, it's done. And you can do that with Mailbox Power and they automatically send it out. It's like I haven't really seen a company that does that well. But Mailbox Power, and then the reason why I mention it is because they allow you to create these creatives. Like you can get a picture of their house and you can literally put it on the mailings, right? So you can really customize the mailing. And that might be something that you kind of can play with as well, like so that you actually get people to read the letter.
Mm-hmm.
They send out, like I know a guy that sends out an envelope. On the actual envelope, it's a picture of the front of their house.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, that's all I do. I only do direct mail, and it's because they see it and then they
Open it. I've
And then
gotten one of those before.
have you.
In the mail. I've received, the envelope with a picture of my house.
Yeah, gotcha. So
Yeah.
they might be using Mailbox Power. There's something called a Giga. Now it's like $5 for this, but if you feel like this is a good deal or whatever, it's a huge one. It's really big, the biggest you can get, and it has, the picture. You can put the picture of your house on there, of their house on there, and then there's also the resume that Brandon talks about, and people
Mm-hmm.
actually like the resume that I created a really nice looking resume.
Mm-hmm.
And in there, it talks about how I specialize in working with absentee owners.
Right. Yeah, it's a big old 12-page resume.
Yeah, it's a 12-page
Right.
resume, and it's pretty cool. So if people actually read it, they could see that you're a probate specialist, and you could gear that all around probate, and you can actually send it to them in the mail if you think that it's a good lead. Anyway.
That is true. And I did go and through that whole process, did the entire resume for that Caitlin and Brandon Moranen's outfit.
Oh yeah.
Does she does those. So I've got that done. And I also got some trifold brochures that are probate brochures, to mail out to attorneys and that type of thing too.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah. But that
all in
seems
on
to be
probate.
very, and that's it's a very impressive thing when you can send out that 12-page resume and it's really good.
Yeah, I mean, everybody that they literally, I don't know any other agents that send out a resume. Sometimes when I say that I'm going to send them out a resume, they're like, okay, no agent is doing that.
Yeah.
So anyway, but if you can put in there too, probate and also the fix and list part of that,
Mm-hmm.
if you did send that to them, and they were thinking about selling, and you're a probate specialist, you talk about that in there or whatever, and then you talk about the fix and list. I mean, that's basically, why would they choose anybody else at that point unless it's like a family member?
That is true. And I do have that paragraph about the fix and list on that probate page.
Yeah, I think if you really, dialed it in with an example, like a before and after picture, I don't know what yours looks like, but these are all things that I'm kind of working on too. I'm kind of niching down. So it's slow but sure, but just idea.
Yeah. I have sent out postcards before that have the pictures of the house on it.
Oh, okay.
And that does work out pretty well. Yeah. And it's funny because I'm sorry, what?
I would open that.
Yeah.
Eric, did you open up yours? Probably, because you're an investor, right?
I opened it up and kind of skimmed through it and then threw it in the garbage. That's what I always do. But I only skim through them to be like, oh, what's this guy doing for copy? And and if it looks really interesting, I might keep it. Or if I'm like, they're just doing the same thing that I've already seen 10 times before, then I just throw it away.
Yeah, and I don't think there's any secret to it, but with the Mailbox Power thing, it's hard enough to send out direct mail pieces, right? So with the Mailbox Power thing, what I like about that is that it's kind of set it and forget it. You can just make sure you're hitting them, every 2 weeks if you want, every week if you want, every month for 2 months or for 3 months, right? Rather than trying to blow your brain out, trying to figure out, okay, what did I send them last time? When am I going to send them this time? You can just set it all up in the beginning.
Cool.
So
the thing I alluded to at the start.
Yes.
There's a condo that I am fixing flipping. So just normal deal. It's a pretty good flip. Looks like I make about $45,000 on the overall as a flip. And then the agent who I gave the lead to would get 30% of that. So it looks like kind of I make 30K net at the end, and the agent makes their 15 for putting the deal together. A fairly typical flip. And because it was a condo, and so I'm always looking at my flips to try to find ones that get me a 15% cash on cash ROI. And those I try to keep. The idea is if I could keep every 3 to 4, 1 out of 3 to 4 flips, I keep as a long-term rental to like build long-term wealth, then I can live off of the profit from the other one. So yesterday, my wife's car needed new brakes, and so I'm waiting for him to put the brakes in. I had a little bit of time, and I brought my laptop, so I'll run the numbers on keeping this particular condo that I'm flipping and see what it looks like. And it was bad numbers, 5% cash on cash, not even close to my 15% that I'm looking for, which is pretty typical. A lot of times, flip isn't a good rental, but this particular one, it was 5%. So I was about to just, forget about it. Think like, I'm just obviously going to flip it like I originally planned. And then I thought, I do have a little bit more time here, like waiting for these breaks. I'm going to re-look at being a note holder on this, because
Wow.
I've done that in the past and it never works. So I kind of forgot about it for a while, but I was like, I have some time, so I'm going to see what that looks like. Right. And just like always, I ran the numbers of, I sell it with owner financing and then sell the note, and you take a haircut on the note, you end up selling at 80% of the value, but you don't have the commissions on the back end. And where does that put me? Right. And it actually just cut my profit from 45,000 down to about 32,000, which is also pretty typical if you approach a flip that way. If you sell the note after you sell the house with the owner financing. And then I decided, well, what if I didn't sell the note? Because I'm kind of heavy liquid right now on cash. What if I just held the note forever? What does that look like? And the numbers blew me away. It's like 13% cash on cash return, which that part's not amazing, but better than a rental. It's pretty good, but not great. But overall, I end up getting a 20% return by keeping the note. And that, just really surprised me. Like, wow, I could turn this thing into a 20% ROI over the course of 5 years. This is starting to look really, really attractive. And let me show you the numbers quick on that. There's even a more attractive scalable way, right? So the only part about that sucks is all your money's tied up, right? Because we're talking about, this condo, I'm going to be into at 188,000, which for my area is a really cheap flip. But so this is a good one I could afford to just keep forever. But I thought, well, what if this was a house, right? Like that was 500,000, and you couldn't only do so many before you're out of money, right? No matter how deep your pockets are, it eats up cash really quick. And sure, I'm getting a 20% return on my money, but as soon as you're out of money, you can't do it anymore.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So there's a way to scale it that lets you just keep doing this over and over and over and over. And it's a really attractive, simple way. And I'll show you that. But before I get into that, I want to show you the numbers on, can you see my screen? On keeping it, because I think if you fully grasp the numbers on keeping it, then you can stay with me into how to scale it. Let me find the one. Where is it? Damn it. I'm not seeing the spreadsheet. So file, open. Here we go. All right. Yeah. So this is the spreadsheet I'm wanting to go over. So this middle column is what we're looking. So keep it as a rental. And bottom line is you get down to the bottom, and cash COC ROI, cash on cash ROI was 5%. let me zoom in on this so you guys can see it better. There, that's better. So this is all three columns are on one property, right? So I analyzed, what if I keep it as a rental? Well, I get 5% ROI. I'm going to have 60K invested into it. And that's because I bought it for 158. I put 60K in as a renovation. I have a note for 158. If I just do a rate and terms refinance, I would end up with a 7.375% interest rate on my loan for the 158,000, because it is a rental and it is a condo. It's higher rates than normal. Plus I'm getting screwed because Biden thinks I should pay higher rates because I have good credit to subsidize people with shitty credit.
Yeah,
So
right.
Yeah,
when you
I've heard about
yeah,
that. Yeah. it's
when you
ridiculous.
compound all that, I end up with a 7.375, even though Joe Blood on the street with a 600 credit score can get a 6% interest on his FHA loan. So in the end, right, I have to, I get $252 a month cash flow. My rent's $1,950, and I get a 5% return. Not good. I'm just going to sell this thing and take my 45K profit. Hate this. Right. Well, then I looked at, well, what if I do a self-fund owner financing? Well, now I can sell it for, so 300,000 is what I'd sell it for regardless. But in this case, when I do this an owner finance sell, so I'm just going to go on Zillow, Craigslist, Trulia, listed as for sale by owner with owner financing, 10% down, 8% interest, 600 credit score requirement. And I can only ask for 8% interest because thanks to Biden, this guy with 600 credit score who used to not be able to get a loan, that probably would have paid 9%, maybe 10%. He can go get a loan for 6% right now, an FHA loan, but then he's going to have to pay PMI. So, because he only has 10% down. So my 8% rate is competitive with that FHA deal. All right. And I'm going to be easier to get approved through than somebody else. And I'll get into how to stay compliant and all that bullshit. But in big big picture thinking, he's buying the house for 300,000. He puts $30,000 down, and I have a note for $270,000 that I'm the bank on, and he's the person borrowing, right? But I only have $188,000 into the deal because, say, I bought it for 158. I sunk in 60. The 60 includes closing costs and stuff. Just to make it simple, I just threw it all in the number. It's not done yet. I got 4 weeks of renovation, so I can't give you exact numbers down to penny, but this is my best estimate of where I'm going to land, right? So this is 218, the 158 plus the 60, into it 218, but he puts 30% down, the 30,000. So now I'm into it 188. That's my cash into this deal. And in return for the 188, he's paying me $1,877 a month. Right. And his total out of pocket payment is $2,385. The only reason I ran this is I had to make sure that his total out of pocket wasn't too out of line with rent. And it's not, it's about $400 a month more, but for home ownership, someone's going to do that. Right. So I'm getting the $1,877 a month. And if you do the cash on cash return, so this 22.5, that's just the 1877 times 12. So over the course of a year, he's going to pay me 22.528. Some of it's principal, some of it's interest. But from my point of view, I have $188,000 into it, and I'm going to get $22,528 a year in payments, which is just a 12% cash on cash return, which, sorry, I had said 13 earlier and I was wrong. It's 12. So still not beautiful, but pretty good. And it would really be bad if my note was only for 188, and because eventually my principal's gone. So it's worse than a 12% return if that was the case. But my note's for 270. Right? You're right. The note's for the full 270, not for the 188 I have invested. Right. And that's why my return's 12% and not 8%. The note's 8% on 270, but I only paid 188 to get it. So my return's 12%. Because I'm getting that payment on a bigger amount than I have invested. So I'm going to put it in the deal that it's a 5-year balloon payment deal. In 5 years, he has to refinance and pay me out. If he doesn't, because he can't, because of whatever reason, I'll probably do a loan modification and extend it out rather than foreclose. But if he does, 5 years later, I get a $76,000 cash payout because the note that started at 270 has been paid down to 264 because of the amortization schedule, five years later. And the 270 or the 370, the 264 that I get paid at closing is $76,000 more than my principal, my investment into the deal. So I make 76K right off the bat. I get this whole 264, not 188. And then I will have collected over 5 years 112,000. The 22,000 over times 5 years gets up to 112. So when you combine it, I make a profit of 188,000. Essentially, I double my money on this flip. Instead of making 45,000, I make 188,000. And the reason I make so much more money is I get the power of being the bank and how amortization schedules work, compounded on top of the power of buying a property to flip, getting a property at a discount to flip. You layer on top of it being the bank, and you get rich pretty freaking quick. And this would have never worked before. Like, let's say 5 years ago, you run these numbers. 5 years ago, you run these numbers, and the end buyer interest rate is going to have to be like, I don't know, 4%, maybe 5% max. Yeah. Right? Because back then interest rates were lower. And then you look at your deal here at the end, and you're at 8% return on your cash on cash, and overall you make 148 instead of 48. So I guess it still maybe would have made sense. It's not nearly as awesome as it is now. It was still kind of attractive. But now that end buyer interest rate can be 8%, which I think is being really realistic. I might even be able to push that some. I'm getting a 20% overall return on my investment. I'm doubling my money in 5 years. And it goes up if, so let's say he pays it off in 1 year and refinances out. Now I have a 55% ROI. And instead of making 45,000 on that flip, I make 103. Right. And
pretty good. Yeah.
3 years, 25, right? 5 years is if he takes the maximum amount of time, then I only make 20% return. It's right. It's unreal. Right. So the only problem with this is that your money gets ate up really fast. Otherwise, every house flipper would just do this over and over and over and over. I don't even have market risk. If I have some market risk, but not a lot. I think the first 10% of a market correction is not out of my pocket. It has to correct more than 10%. And then the guy's got a default. And then I'm going to take over the house, and I could lose some money of my, if it took a 15% correction, I'm going to take a 5% of the overall value hit. So it's better than a rental because I don't take all the market risk. It's better than a rental because I make a way higher return, 20% as opposed to less than 5%. Well, I guess 5% versus 20%. And the only way a rental is going to beat me out is if there's a high appreciation. Like home values have to really go up because I don't get to keep appreciation. Just like I'm not on the hook for depreciation, I also don't get to make appreciation. So I'm betting, though, that we just had a huge run up in prices in houses. And I think with everything that's happening, there's forces that are deflationary and inflationary. So it's impossible to know for sure. But you have the energy sector constricting, which is downward pressure on prices and bad for the economy. We have the Fed continuing to hike rates. There's a lot of things happening right now that point at home values coming down, right? And then there's some things that point at home values going up. Like if the Fed completely reverses course and we get runaway inflation, then home values would go up. But because of the environment we're in, I don't think most people would say that there's a better than 50% chance the house values are going to go up considerably in the near term. I think more people are probably concerned that they're going to go down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So considering that piece and considering my guaranteed rate that, you know, the note doesn't change rates. It just is what it is. When you like, this is just how it goes down unless the guy defaults, then he loses his 30 grand and I go find a new buyer. Right.
Yeah.
This seems like the way to go with every single flip. You know, the only problem is the money part, right? So the first thing I thought of is, well, what if I had the note is with somebody else and I wrap it, right? Like, I find an investor to give the $188,000 and I wrap it with a $270,000 note, right? And now it's kind of like the buyer's buying it subject to almost. If I did that, that's more complicated. So I'm not really thrilled with that. I think a lot of buyers are not going to like that either. I think it makes this whole deal a lot harder to pull off. So what I figured out, so granted, this all just happened yesterday. So I'm real infant stages of figuring all this out. But I thought, well, what if I just I own this note. I don't own the house anymore, but I do own this note for $270,000. And I don't want to sell the note because you have to take like a 20% haircut on it. And then I'm back to the shitty deal where, you know, I don't want to sell my note because I'm going to take a haircut on it and I'm just going to get cash up front and I'm better off just flipping it than I am selling the note. So instead of selling the note, what if I keep the note and use it as collateral for another note? So instead of so I go to a private lender and I say, I would like to borrow $188,000 and I will pay you 10% interest. And I want to have a 40-year amortization. So I ran all these numbers of 40-year am instead of 30 to help get the monthly payment down because I think it's going to be more attractive to an end buyer. But if you change it to a 30, it barely changes anything on my end. So like I could really care less. See, it jumps his payment way up, which I think makes it a harder sell. Now he probably would just rent this buyer. But if you look at my overall ROI, I went from like 20.05 to 19.95. Mm-hmm. So I could probably care less. Right. So I give him the 40. It's going to be an easier sell for the buyer. So if I get a note for $188,000, 40-year amortization term, and I don't back it by real estate. So typically you think about, you get a note and the collateral is the real estate, and then they put it against, you know, leaning against the property. Well, my dad was a banker. That was his profession. And he still serves on the board of a couple of banks and is still active in that world. So when I had that thought, I'm like, what if I used a note as collateral for a note? So for instance, if I default on my $188,000 note at 10%, that lender now gets to take my $270,000 note at 8%. Like from the point of view of a lender, that's pretty damn attractive, right? Like they went from a $188,000 note to a $270,000 note. Why would they not do that? They almost hope that I default because they're going to get like, I don't know, over $90,000, I think, if he's 70, no, almost 90, $82,000, right? Of extra collateral immediately. I could see that being an easy sell. So I asked my dad, I'm like, does this ever happen? Do people use notes as collateral on other notes? And he's like, yeah, that happens all the time. That's very normal. You have an investor that is a private lender, and instead of having a portfolio of rental properties, they'll have a portfolio of notes. And they'll use those notes sometimes as collateral for a loan from the bank because that's where they have all their equity. I'm like, well, if that's normal, I want to run the numbers. You know, if I go to a private lender and I say, all right, I want 188,000 because that gives me all my money out of this. I have $0 into this deal as soon as I take this note for 188. So I have all my money back, and my payments to here, where is it? There, I owe now $101,596 a month to the private lender. I've got all my cash back, but I have this note that's bringing in 1877. So I'm still getting a cash flow of $280, $281 a month, but I have no money into the deal. And I still get the huge payoff when the buyer ends up refinancing this 5 years later. So I can have zero money left into the deal and take my payout over a course of 5 years instead of instead of just selling it and taking my $45,000 profit. If I structure it this way, I get $280 a month and $76,000 when they refinance. So I turn my $45,000 flip into a $93,000 flip, over double my profit on the flip by just being a little patient on the course that I take my profit. And I also now have a lot of power with my taxes, because as soon as I have this note for 270 with the buyer, I can either structure my accounting to show that I realized the gain, the difference between the 188 and the 270, because my net worth just went up. I can either realize the gain right then, or I can structure it where I realize the gain monthly just in the as the payments come in, right? So I can, depending on how my income's going that year, if I hadn't made very much money, then, and I want to show better income, it's because I'm in a lower tax bracket and maybe it'll help me get loans in the future from banks, then I can just realize my profit right up front and make my taxes look good. If I'm having a great year and I'm in a high tax bracket and I don't really want the profit right now, I can just structure it where I take my profit slowly, a little bit every month as it comes in, and take my taxes. I get to be the author of when I receive my profit, I guess that's what I'm saying from a tax standpoint. And I doubled it. So this looks really damn attractive to me. And what where I'm gonna, again, I just thought of this yesterday, right? So this isn't like, I'm not very far down this rabbit hole, but where my head started going is I thought, what if I used my relationships with private lenders that I already know, and I could buy these notes on a bigger scale, and I used it to fund the flippers projects in other markets for people that are in BrokerVestor, and I become that middleman in the deal. So I'm going to hold the notes with the end buyers at the end of the deal, and then I have the private. It would allow me to fund flippers deals in this group, I guess is what I'm saying.
Right.
If all the flippers exited with this strategy, they could either do it themselves, what I just explained, or they could let me do it if they didn't want to. And I could look at the deal and be like, okay, here's how I can bring the money to the table. If you have no cash in the bank and you want to do this deal, I'll fund it. And this is how we need to structure the exit.
Interesting. Yeah, because I mean, everybody wins in that regard. Obviously, the seller, again, you'd have to kind of massage that or know how to explain what you're doing.
Yeah, and I guess I should show the way I would do that too. So say it's your deal, right? And you'd make your money. Say I pay the 158. I pay most of the 60. Say I have to have the investor bring some money to the table so they're invested in the deal, especially with me being out of state. I can't just 100% finance it. But say they put $30,000 into it and I fund the whole rest of the deal and we exit with this strategy. Well, from my point of view, maybe the renovation is 70,000 instead of 60,000. And I'm building in a 10K payout to that investor who put 30 in and gets 40 out. So the investor has way less risk, puts way less money in, and if I change this renovation number to 70, I'm still looking pretty good. 18% overall return. You know, my cash on cash didn't drop that much. And as long as this number's over 10, I'll bankroll this. So it still makes sense, I guess, is my point.
Yeah.
We just kind of all share split. There's a lot of different ways to do it, I guess, to structure it, depending on who needs money up front now, who needs money, who doesn't need money right now and can take it over time and just wants more money.
Yeah, man. I mean, being able for you to fund I mean, that'd be a pretty big deal, because I mean, I can't necessarily say that I've been in the private lending, space as far as like meeting a lot of private lenders to be able to get
there's
cash back out.
no secret to doing that either. Like the only way to do that is to meet you build up a good resume with a good reputation and meet people and get them comfortable with giving you money. Like that's the private lending game.
Right. But if you already have those built out, and you are, it's a no risk game for you to fund other people's deals in other states and whatnot. It's pretty interesting.
And if you think it from the private lender's point of view, it's really low risk for them too. Like in this deal we just looked at, it's pretty much like a 60% loan to value in a 100. Well, I don't know what's 188 divided by 270. 69. So it's not super high risk, is my point.
Yeah,
right.
So 70% loan to value, and they get a 10% return. It's pretty damn impossible for a lender to get a 10% return on a 70% loan to value today.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Huh.
Interesting, man. I mean, I've never thought of it, the way that you kind of explained it. There's so many different ways to do it, but the problem is getting your cash back out.
Yeah. Which isn't a problem eventually.
Yeah. Right.
Eventually you don't want your cash back out. Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Eventually you're going to get there where it's like, God, what am I going to do with all this? I don't want it sitting in my bank account.
Like, yeah. So true.
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, when you send this one out, I'm gonna have to watch the whole thing again.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah.
And just kind
Really
of absorb that more, But I understand what you're doing. And I mean, I even go back to it had to be early 1980s. I remember I did some deal and I carried back a commission or something for some commercial deal. And I just sold it to some private guy. It was just a guy with an IRA account. And and I didn't even think that much about it. It was just like, oh yeah, I called a couple of people and said, sure, I'll buy that note, and I got 85% of the note value, and I was happy. And the guy got the payments, and it all worked out great. So yeah. I mean, it's not as tough as it might seem, I guess, is my point, when you're dealing with the private lenders.
Yeah, it's not. Whether they're just looking at risk, and especially structuring it the way I just said. I'm the one that's lending them, borrowing the money from them. I'm still stuck in the middle of this, so they know that I'm gonna pay because I have a high credit score and a great history, and I'm not going to leave them hanging. But there is some risk in this that I didn't touch on at all. But let's say I do this where I use the private capital to get my money back out. Now the renter stops, or not renter, the buyer stops making payments. I still have to come up with that money for the private lender. And if this happened on a big scale, like say I did, a whole bunch of these, now in the short run, like I have to make sure that I have cash reserves set aside that are proportionally equal to the number of these kind of deals I have out there. Because if you have a big market shift and a bunch of people quit paying, I'm still sandwiched in the middle, like, of all this. So
right.
Yeah. And while there's plenty of money there to foreclose and make it all right, you still have to have enough cash to get there. Like,
Yeah.
because this is not like a fix and list deal where the foreclosure process is 4 months. This now is a consumer loan. And I didn't touch on that at all either. It's super easy to meet all those requirements to stay good on the whole like predatory lending and Dodd-Frank Act, all that crap. You just hire an RMLO, a registered
Oh yeah.
mortgage loan officer, and you probably both know one. Like they're all over the place. Everyone knows their lender guy that's a broker. All those brokers are registered mortgage loan officers, and they all know how to put together the package because they're doing it as a broker for, it's the exact same thing they already do. The broker puts in the truth in lending statements, gets signatures, they put the whole package thing together. And so you just pay them, it's about $1,500 for is a going rate for an RMLO to just put the package together for you. So you go find your buyer. It's this simple. You find your buyer off of Zillow. You guys have a verbal agreement. You maybe make them do a credit check, like through like where they pay for it. Even like you say you're going to rent to them and you have them do a credit check. Like I use Avail for my renting. So I'd have them do that quick to make sure their credit's where I thought it was, say it's 600. So I don't waste the $1,500 with the RMLO and then they can't get approved, right? So you find the buyer, their credit's good. You put them in touch with your RMLO. Your RMLO asks them for a bunch of stuff. They give it to them and then they're done. The RMLO gives you a packet and you just stick it on your Google Drive forever, right? And now you're good. Like it's really that simple to stay compliant, you know, with all those rules. But at the same time, if you have to foreclose, it's like 6 to 9 months. It's not 4 months because this is not a private loan. This is a residential loan.
Interesting.
Yeah. So if
Yeah,
you don't
man.
have 6 to 9 months reserves sitting there to make the payments, it starts to get make the payments to your private investor on your other note. You get in trouble in a hurry.
Right.
Yeah,
Huh.
but you know, I can see how that would be really valuable when you take not every deal like that, but you take every third or fourth deal or something. You said, okay, I was going to keep this as a rental anyway, and instead I'll do this.
Yes.
You know, and you've still got income coming in, and you got, you know, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
This is just another way to, enhance your income. Yeah.
Yeah. Another way to skin the cat.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh.
Nice, man. Well, I'd like to see how this, progresses. Obviously, I still need to kind of wrap my head around it a little bit. But I mean, it's definitely, like you said, a wealth building strategy for sure.
Yeah, I'm gonna do it on this condo, so I'll be able to share.
Oh, awesome.
How this
Okay,
unfolds, like with a real life example.
that's
Oh.
sweet.
That
Okay,
is
I
really
didn't know
cool.
that.
Yeah.
That'll be great. I'd love to hear more about that.
Cool. Maybe I'll figure something out that I haven't thought of yet in the middle of it, and it'd be like, oh, never mind. This was a terrible idea. But
Yeah, well, that's just real estate in general. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
Yeah.
at least you're kind of figuring out a different path to kind of, do different types of deals. So it's kind of the name of the game in these types of sideways weird markets.
Yeah, definitely. Cool.
Sweet, dude. Well, thanks for sharing it.
I like it.
Yeah. Well, we'll wrap it up unless either of you got anything else to add.
No, man.
For now.
I think I'm good.
Yeah. Got to get back and get on the phone.
Exactly. Yeah,
Perfect.
Hang out a couple hours. So
Close the
Yeah.
deal.
yeah.
All
All
right.
right, guys.
All right.
Nice catching up. We'll talk to you guys next week, hopefully.
Yep.
Sounds good. Thanks, Jordan.
Yep. See you guys.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.